I knew she was going to be great, and I knew that we needed a really great point guard to give us a shot, right? That we had some other pieces, but when you got her, that's when you started to really see that this kid was wired so differently and what she could do. I mean, she makes the extraordinary ordinary.
I believe growing her physical strength and her ability to exist in spaces against bigger, stronger athletes than what she faced in college. So obviously future Hall of Famer, and has had a great impact on the game already.
The arrival of Caitlin Clark to the WNBA has caused quite a stir, not only because of her unique skill set, but also due to her magnetic personality that keeps drawing in new fans. The league is still adjusting to her impact, scrambling to find ways to slow down the rising superstar, a task far easier said than done. Caitlin is the talk of the league, and it's no surprise that WNBA head coaches are constantly being asked about her during their media sessions. While coaches do their best to remain diplomatic and avoid stirring controversy, they often have no choice but to weigh in on Caitlin Clark and her electrifying game. Most of their comments focus on her on-court presence and are framed around specific matchups, but if you read between the lines, there are some fascinating insights to uncover. Stick around, because what these coaches are saying might just reveal the real truth about Caitlin Clark's future in the WNBA. The opinions of WNBA head coaches are unique. They are the ones that actually have to prepare game plans to stop Caitlin Clark, and they are the ones to take heat from the media if these plans fail to bear fruit, as they often do. This is perhaps why you will be hard-pressed to find disrespect in their comments, as they are intimately familiar with Clark's game and know exactly why she is posting historic numbers as a rookie. Of course, that doesn't mean the opposing coaches are prepared to just crown Caitlin Clark as unbeatable and turn into her loyal fans. Basketball coaches are a proud bunch, so it's understandable that some of them are a little bit defiant when they have to answer Caitlin Clark questions. There is another factor to consider when looking into quotes by coaches. Their job is to be motivators first and foremost, and they are well aware that any sound bites they give to the media will quickly find their way to the locker rooms. The last thing a coach wants is to give her own players a reason to think she prefers Caitlin Clark to them, even if this may be true in some cases. Enraging Clark with condescending comments is just as bad. Personality of the coach also comes into play, so some of the most interesting quotes about Caitlin Clark came from successful coaches who previously played in the WNBA. Becky Hammon, a six-time WNBA All-Star and a WNBA career assist leader who worked for years as a San Antonio Spurs, has some leeway to speak her mind about Caitlin Clark. The current Las Vegas Aces coach was totally blunt when addressing Clark and all the controversy about her that has dominated the headlines for months.
I think she's amazing. I watched every time I possibly could. And our league loves her. This has nothing to do. We're just doing our job. We're going to show up. Who is ever on the other team is on the other team. We don't really care. We're going to show up and do us. And so I think this narrative of like everybody hating on Caitlin Clark, and even the black and white thing, knock it off. It's not there.
The coach makes it clear that she likes Caitlin, but she stands up for all the WNBA players who gave the college points record holder a hard time when she joined the pro league. The ethos of always competing hard is a more realistic explanation for all the tough love Caitlin Clark is receiving than the racial narrative that some media personalities and a few players pushed in recent months. Becky Hammon is categorical about this, and she might be right. It's about time everybody stops putting Clark's name into every possible debate and just watches her hoop. The truth is, the vast majority of WNBA players and head coaches would love to have Caitlin Clark on their team, but since they don't, they pretend the grapes are sour. Perhaps the most direct example of such thinking came from the Minnesota Lynx coach Cheryl Reeve while Clark was still at Iowa. Since her team was not really in the running for the star guard anyway, Reeve gave an impassioned speech on the controversial topic of tanking for star players. This is what she said about the possibility of chasing Clark in the WNBA draft.
You're going to ask me privately, are we going to tank for Caitlin Clark and like that? Like, it's just not how I would do things. If Glenn came to me and said, Cheryl, I want you to do that, I probably would step aside and say, let someone else do that. I don't believe in that. I think if you get there organically and that's what you deserve, great. I am never going to try to be in that situation. You know, Caitlin Clark might make you want to lose every game, but not here.
A lot of coaches feel this way, but this sounds a bit over the top. Intentionally losing games in order to earn a higher draft pick is an unsportsmanlike tactic that frequently backfires, but mentioning the team owner as well as Clark by name was unnecessary. We don't know whether any teams near the bottom of the standings last season lost games by design, but it's safe to say that some of them didn't mind too much given the strength of the incoming draft class. Since then, Cheryl has changed approach when talking about Caitlin, and what you will hear now is quite impressive.
I believe growing her physical strength and her ability to exist in spaces against bigger, stronger athletes than what she faced in college. So obviously, future Hall of Famer, and has had a great impact on the game already.
Young players need time to become impactful on the next level, and it was more or less expected that Indiana Fever might be a bit wobbly to open the season. As Caitlin Clark became more relaxed in her new surroundings, the team visibly changed. Stephanie White, a former Indiana Fever player and now the head coach of Connecticut Sun and the reigning coach of the year, had a very interesting view of the progress the team has made over the course of Clark's first season.
Well, I think anytime you're a young team that's really growing into yourself, the understanding of one another, the timing, the pace, the connectedness just wasn't quite there early. It's there now. Everybody on the floor understands how, when, and where Caitlin Clark can get them the ball. And so they get there.
This may be the most cool-headed analysis of Clark's season we heard all year. It's a fact that Fever was a bit out of sync early, which was reflected in the win-loss column. Their surge in the standings was surely fueled by Caitlin Clark, but many other players on the team pulled their weight. Stephanie White acknowledges as much, but reminds us to wait with any conclusions and give a young team some time to build an identity. This is an opinion echoed by several other WNBA head coaches who have the most information and the best minds for women's basketball. Another example of a coach having a clear perspective on Caitlin Clark's growth into a superstar came from Sandy Brondello. The Australian-born coach who currently leads New York Liberty gave a fantastic answer when she was asked to comment on Clark. To make it even more pertinent, she focused mostly on what she saw on the floor with her own eyes during her team's matchups against Indiana Fever.
Look, she's a great young talent, and you have to remember that she's a young talent. She's coming into the WNBA for the first time. She's going to be a really good player. I know that much. But it's hard coming in as a number one. When's the last time a number one pick has come in and dominated from the start? And I think she's had some really good moments. For sure, she had 20 in the first game. And you were able to keep her to single digits in that last game. But very capable. Can't leave her open. So I think the whole game plan's around her, and she's going to be a player that will continue to grow because I think she's a quick learner. She's got high basketball IQ. So she's going to be okay.
It's not talked enough about the pressure that's been placed on Caitlin Clark as a college phenom and media superstar, not to mention the number one pick in a very strong draft. When we take this into account, her transition to the pros looks even more impressive, especially considering that coaches like Sandy Brondello are throwing the whole defensive playbook at her. At this point, it's becoming clear that Clark will definitely transform into a more complete player, but nobody can guess where her ceiling really is. For now, she isn't getting any grounds given to her, on the court or in the media room. Count the Los Angeles Sparks coach Curt Miller among those who still think it's possible to slow Caitlin Clark down. After his team split a pair of games against the Indiana Fever, the veteran coach offered high praise of Clark in general, but immediately countered with a compliment for his own defensive plan. Here is his double-edged take.
She's so talented and she draws so much attention. And then, what's so underrated about her is her passing. Tonight, she was able to get to the foul line a lot, which supplemented her offense. But, I thought we did a pretty good job both games on her.
The coach just doesn't seem to be bothered about Caitlin Clark very much. He either has a great poker face, or he truly believes that Caitlin was only able to score on the Sparks because she shot a lot of free throws. She scored 30 in one game and nearly had a triple-double in the other, but for Coach Miller, that amounts to a good job by the defense. He is certainly not the only coach to stubbornly emphasize the defensive effort over Caitlin Clark's brilliance. This is a common theme in post-game media conferences, regardless of the final score of the game. Probably the most insistent of all coaches was Eric Thibault, who is the top basketball decision-maker for the Washington Mystics. He decided to be fiercely loyal to his players and give credit individually to each defender who covered Clark in the game.
I think we did a pretty good job one-on-one. They started running her off more screens. screens, and that's a little tougher. Didi's big, trying to navigate all those screens. I thought we did a pretty good job one-on-one. Ariel took a turn on her down the stretch too, trying to keep Ariel out of foul trouble a little bit early in the game. Hey, she makes a tough shot. We forced her into 8 turnovers, but she made some tough-ass shots. So credit to Caitlin.
Again, Coach Eric gets extra points for sticking up for his girls, but he is selling Caitlin Clark short. It doesn't take a basketball expert to know that Clark does a little more than just run off screens and hit tough shots. She is the offensive engine of her team and one of the best playmakers in the WNBA, and she is hurting teams when she plays the point guard or runs free without the ball. Her turnover numbers hardly tell the whole story, and while she needs to get more careful, she does so much on the court that cherry-picking numbers to put her down is totally unfair. One thing we rarely hear from WNBA coaches is the acknowledgement of Caitlin Clark's impact on the sport of women's basketball. The soaring attendance and a flood of sponsor money that the league is seeing right now are directly related to Caitlin Clark's popularity. Most professional coaches who are facing Clark avoid talking about it, but her college nemesis had enough good sense to go in that direction. Here is what Dawn Staley, the coach of South Carolina, had to say after her team defeated Clark's Iowa in the final game of the 2024 NCAA tournament.
And I want to personally thank Caitlin Clark for lifting up our sport. She carried a heavy load for our sport, and it just is not going to stop here on the collegiate tour. But when she is the #1 pick in the WNBA draft, she's gonna lift that league up as well. So
now that's classy. Dawn Staley had all the reasons to be in a celebratory mood and blow her own horn, but she kept the big picture in mind and didn't forget to thank the player that her team just vanquished. She was also very candid about Caitlin's future WNBA journey, and we see today that her words were almost prophetic. While this was said in a very emotional moment, it's really something that every basketball professional understands very well, and it wouldn't be the end of the world if coaches had less restraint when discussing the excitement that Clark is creating by merely being present on the floor. Somewhat surprisingly, Clark received the biggest endorsements from the coach of a team that she had some very heated battles against. Phoenix Mercury coach Nate Tibbetts went into painstaking detail when he was trying to explain Clark's dominance, and he even predicted her career trajectory in very strong terms. He acknowledged that the version of Clark we are seeing now is already a terror for the defenses, and pointed out that defensive schemes will become even less effective at limiting her as she gathers valuable experience in the WNBA.
What makes it effective is Clark's shooting ability and passing ability. She puts a lot of pressure on you with, both areas. She can come off and shoot it, but then she's a great passer. And the more she's in the league, she's even going to become a better passer because she's going to see everything. Coaches, teams are throwing everything at her. And, that's what great players see. The more reps they get at it, they're going to continue to improve. And she has that ability to improve.
The point is, Caitlin Clark is already a complete player offensively. You can't sag off her or she will score at will. And if you send help, she will find open shooters with ease. Confusing her with unusual defensive setups can only work for a while, and without doubt, Clark will get better at recognizing such traps and staying a step ahead of her opponents. The league as a whole is slowly coming to the realization that Caitlin will be a problem for years to come, even if admitting it publicly is hard. Some WNBA coaches seem to be incensed by all the noise and would like the focus to go back to the game itself. While such an attitude seems reasonable, denying Caitlin her moment in the spotlight isn't okay, especially when coming from a coach whose players were largely to blame for some of the rough treatment of the young star. The Chicago Sky is one of the teams that tried to be very physical with Caitlin Clark, but their coach Teresa Weatherspoon still thinks that all the talk about non-basketball stuff is misguided.
It has been a lot of talk. To talk about women's basketball is pretty big. It's a big thing. It's huge. But what you want it to be spoken about is the game, the skill, the talent, versatility, how hard we play, what they have to do to be able to step between those 4 lines all the time. And to talk about competitors. They're out there to compete to go win.
There is nothing wrong with competing uncompromisingly and displaying talent and versatility, but ignoring the hard fouls and overall animosity towards Clark is cringeworthy. Teresa Weatherspoon is clearly aware how much Clark's ascent to superstar level means for the game, but she is quick to steer the conversation back to nuts and bolts of basketball rather than the overall advancement of the game. By the way, Caitlin's play and her demeanor on the court have been exemplary, so even if we narrow the focus, she would still be in the news all the time, whether the Chicago Sky, their head coach, and their own prized rookie Angel Reese like it or not. Some other coaches are deliberately taking a different approach and giving Clark the credit she deserves. perhaps in an attempt to dull her competitive edge. The Seattle Storm have also played Caitlin in a physical way, but at least their coach is willing to address her obvious talents frankly and without holding back. Coach Noelle Quinn gave one of the rosiest outlooks of Caitlin's game that we heard so far from someone of her stature, listing all the qualities that make her a special basketball player.
She's a good player, shot making ability, deep. We don't talk enough about her passing. Her being 6 feet, she can see a lot, make a lot of reads, and obviously teams are being aggressive on her, and she's still, finding ways to, score, get to the rim, and assist her teammates. She's confident, she's poised, she's different, she's a beast. We talk about her being a generational talent. She has a lot of talent, and she's going to continue to keep getting better.
This opinion is more in line with what all the fans see, and it's safe to say that most coaches do too. With time, more of them will feel compelled to talk about it openly, especially as Clark continues to rack up big numbers and collect hard-fought wins against them. She really is the rare player that is changing how women's basketball looks and feels, bringing it closer to the modern NBA game. That's why Noelle Quinn calling her a generational talent means a lot, as it might be the first step towards Clark getting the league-wide recognition she certainly deserves. Of course, there is one coach who is paid to be in Caitlin Clark's corner. That would be the Indiana Fever head coach Christy Sides, with whom Clark seems to be getting along pretty well. The feelings are mutual, and Sides is absolutely thrilled to have such a game-changer on her squad. She isn't afraid to show love, as the following quote clearly demonstrates.
First and foremost, she's the most competitive human being I've ever met. I really compare her to Diana Taurasi. She's always looking to find ways to get better. How can I help the team? What can we do? But she found her rhythm tonight. She's, the timing for our players is getting better every game. So some of the ones that, some of the shots that, those passes that she was making early, we just weren't ready for them. Now that chemistry is there, that timing is there, and that's going to keep getting better. But she just wants to win. She just wants to win. And to me, she's going to be my Rookie of the Year every day.
Christy Sides was responding to a question related to the Rookie of the Year race, but she said much more than simply support Clark as her pick for the award. She correctly pointed out her competitive nature and compared her to a WNBA legend, while also making sure to mention a wider team perspective. Ultimately, Clark's individual accolades won't mean too much without sustained team success, and the fact that chemistry between Clark and her teammates is improving with every game they play together is very encouraging. Christy Sides may not be an impartial observer, but her views are based on everyday experience with Caitlin and the rest of the team during practice. In just a few short months, Caitlin Clark has won the begrudging admiration of top basketball strategists in the WNBA. This is a telltale sign of a surefire superstar in the making, as rookies who command that much respect are few and far between. Of course, she will continue to be tested every night, and coaches won't stop scheming to slow her down. Judging by the way she has handled both criticism and tributes at the tender age of 22, she will find additional motivation in the comments by WNBA coaches to prove her supporters right and permanently silence the haters. Most coaches agree that the best is yet to come, and the fans who started following Caitlin Clark from her rookie season are in for a fantastic ride that might include a few championships before it's all said and done.